Hey guys, it's me Ram here, and in today's video I'm going to be comparing some of the best 4x4 speed cubes in a tier list video. Before we begin, I just want to get a couple of things out of the way. Number 1, this entire tier list is completely my opinion. If you disagree with something, feel free to make your own tier list. I'll link this exact template in the description below. However, if you are going to make one, please do give me some credit. Secondly, let me just quickly go over all these cubes over here. So starting here, we have the Gyan 460M. Here we have the Moyu Aosu GTS 2M. Here we have the Volk 4M. This in black is the Moyu Aosu WRM. This is the original Chi V2m M. This is the Chi V2m Mini M. This right here is the Yushin Little Magic 4x4M. This right here is the YJ MGC 4x4. This here is the Mei Long 4x4M. This right here is the Moyu RS4M recently released. This right here is the YJ Yusu V2m. This right here is the Diansheng 4x4M. This right here is the Shengshou Mr M 4x4. This right here is the Chi MS 4x4. This is the X-Man Ambition very recently released 4x4. This is the Mini YJ Zishu 4x4. And this is the Cyclone Boys K Xuan 4x4M. So without any further ado, let's just get right into this tier list video, starting out with the Cyclone Boys K Xuan 4x4M before I forget its super weird name. Alright, so in general, Cyclone Boys has been trying to make a comeback with newer releases, however it's just not working. This puzzle is just a few dollars cheaper than the MGC 4x4, and overall I don't think this puzzle is worth it at all. I saw Speedcube reviews video on it, and overall this puzzle just seemed super slow and grindy and catchy in general, and overall not a pleasure to turn at all. Therefore I think I'm gonna drop it off into F tier, a pretty negative start, however we can only go up from here. Alright, next let's go to the Mei Long M 4x4. So this is one of the best budget options as of now, and overall it's quite a nice puzzle, and its only other competitor as of now is the Chi MS 4x4. So in general, this puzzle is a little bit less catchy than the MS, however it is a little bit slower, and speed is something I really value in a 4x4 in general. I don't think it's as good as a flagship, therefore I'm not going to put it into S or A, but it's really not that bad either, therefore I'm not going to put it into C or F either. So I'm going to balance it all out and put it into B tier. Alright, so let's do the other budget option, the Chi MS 4x4. So this puzzle is more catchy but faster than the Mei Long M 4x4. And really it comes down to whether you want a little bit more speed or you want fewer catches. And honestly I would choose more speed, but there are people who don't really like speed in a 4x4. So I'm just going to put this in the same tier as the Mei Long M 4x4 in B. It's not as good as the flagships, however it's really not that bad either. Alright, next let's go to the original Chi V2m M 4x4. So in general the V2m is one of the most revolutionary 4x4s of all time. It's been used to break a ton of world records, and overall it's just very revolutionary in general, but for now it's not really that great of an option because it doesn't even come factory magnetized. Therefore I'm just going to drop it off into C tier. I'm not going to put it into F tier because honestly I can't put such a revolutionary cube into F tier. However, C tier is where it belongs because it's really not that worth it this year. Alright, next let's go to the YJ Yusu V2m 4x4. So this is also another budget option, but it's a little bit worse than these two, but honestly it's not as bad as C or F tier, so I'm just going to put it into the lower end of B tier. It's not a bad puzzle at all, don't get me wrong, and it's still a viable option. However, I'd recommend the Mei Long or the MS 4x4 over this. And the Yushin Little Magic, I have the same things to say. It is a little bit worse than the Yusu V2m actually, and quite a bit worse than the Mei Long M and the Chi MS 4x4. So once again I'm just going to drop it off into the lower end of B tier. I'd much rather recommend a Mei Long M or a Chi MS 4x4. These two shouldn't be bought as of now. Alright, next let's go to the Shengshou Mr M 4x4. So just like the Cyclone Boys 4x4, this is super grindy and slow and catchy and overall just a pain to turn. But the one thing it has going for it is it's a lot cheaper than the Cyclone Boys 4x4. But honestly, it's not even close to these, therefore I'm going to put it on the lower end of C tier. Actually thinking about it again, I could give it F tier, but I like the Mr M pyramids, hashtag bias. Alright, anyways, next let's go to the newly released X-Man Ambition 4x4. So, what I've heard from a lot of people is that it's not nearly as good as like the Moyu Aosu WRM or GTS 2M or the MGC 4x4, but it is quite a good option and I think it's a little bit cheaper than them. Therefore, I'm going to put it into like the lower end of A tier in general. It's a pretty good buy in my opinion, and there's still a lot more testing to be done on it, but I think I'm just gonna drop it off on the lower end of A tier because that's where I feel comfortable dropping it off. Okay, next let's do the mini YJ 4x4. So this is actually a very interesting puzzle and I'm gonna go all out and drop it straight into S tier here because it's honestly a really good buy. If you have smaller hands, this feels like an MGC but faster and less catchy. I'm dropping it off into S tier for now. Even JPM himself said that he'd consider it as a main, but it's just way too small for him. And let's just do its older brother, the YJ MGC 4x4. This puzzle is also pretty great, but it's a little bit slower than this, a little bit more expensive, and overall a little bit bigger, but it's quite a lot cheaper than the flagships from Moyu. Therefore, I'm gonna drop it off into S tier as well. I don't think it's necessarily the best 4x4 in the market. I'll make a video on that in the future. However, I think it's one of the best and it's definitely worth picking up. Alright, next let's go to the GAN 460M, and I feel absolutely terrible because I actually mained this puzzle at one point and the inner layers were absolutely terrible and this puzzle was $60. So expensive, and yep, overall just not a worthy buy at all. I felt bad recommending it to so many people. I thought the outer layers were great, but the inner layers were just way too catchy, and once again either I'll put it into like a low C tier or I'll just drop it off into F tier. Okay, in this scenario I think since it was GAN and we were expecting so much and they priced it just so high, I'm just gonna drop it off into F tier. It doesn't even deserve C tier. I'm just really disappointed in GAN for releasing this puzzle, and I'm even more disappointed in myself for actually maining it at one point. Alright, next let's go to the Walk 4M. So this, people thought that it would be the Aosu GTS 2M killer, but it was much worse than those cubes. It was really slow and overall people were considering it a flagship at one point, but honestly it's far from that, and I think I'm just going to drop it off into C tier. It's not as bad as GAN's flagship, however I think these budget options can definitely be a much more worthy buy than the Walk 4M, and if you're looking for something more premium, just get the MGC or one of these Moyu 4x4s that I'll talk about in a bit. Alright, next let's do the mini Yusu M, and this actually did come factory magnetized, so it was a better buy than the original Yusu M. However, the mini Yusu apparently was a lot worse than the original, therefore I'm just going to drop it off into C tier. It was cheaper than this, however it was worse, so it all balances out and comes out into C tier. Alright, next let's do the Diansheng 4x4M. Now honestly I haven't tried this, but I really haven't heard too many great things about it. The only thing it has going for it is it's quite cheap, but these budget options on top here are much better in my opinion. Therefore I'm just going to drop it off onto the lower end of C tier. Actually towards the middle of C tier, but yeah, overall I'd recommend the Mei Long or the MS over the Diansheng 4x4. Alright, let's do one of the two Moyu 4x4s. This is one I actually own, the Aosu GTS 2M, and it's quite expensive for a 4x4, especially compared to the MGC, but it's a lot more reliable than the MGC, but I still don't feel comfortable dropping it into S tier because it's really expensive. So I think I'm going to drop it off into the higher end of A tier. And now let's do the Aosu WRM, which will also get an A tier according to me. So this was a little bit cheaper than the Aosu GTS 2M, but the WRM in my opinion had far more catches than the GTS 2M. I don't know, for whatever reason the corner cutting was just bad on this puzzle, but a lot of fast people mained it, therefore I'm just going to drop it off into A tier as well. I personally prefer the GTS 2M, but a lot of people also prefer the WRM. I think it just comes down to personal preference and whether you have accurate turning or not. Alright, and now we're on the last puzzle, the RS4M. So this puzzle is actually quite a lot more catchy than the Chi MS and even the Mei Long M 4x4, and I think I'm going to drop it off into the higher end of C. Actually, I'm going to drop it off into the lower end of B tier. All in all, this puzzle does seem quite a bit catchy. However, the Mei Long M is just so much less catchy, and I definitely recommend it or the MS 4x4 over the RS4M. So all in all, that's about it for my tier list video. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this list. However, once again, if you're not, feel free to make your own. I'll leave this exact template in the description below. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and bye.